Welcome back to The Explainer. Let's jump right into it today. We're taking a really fascinating journey into the past, looking at a true masterclass and seeing the absolute magic hidden right inside the mundane. We are, of course, exploring Patrick Kavanagh's celebrated poem, A Christmas Childhood. If you've ever wondered how writers can take something completely, totally ordinary and make it feel utterly enchanting, well, you are in the right place. We're going to break down exactly how this piece of writing operates, acting almost like a time machine back to a very specific, transfigured way of seeing the world. Here is a quick roadmap of what we're covering today. 1. The magic of the ordinary. 2. A tone of nostalgia. 3. Scenic and sensual imagery. 4. The poet's toolkit. And finally, 5. The theme of innocence. All right, let's start with section 1. The magic of the ordinary, setting the scene.
To really grasp Kavanagh's magic, we first have to understand his canvas, right? We're talking about the deeply rural, very ordinary winter landscape of his childhood farm in Monaghan. But there's this dual reality going on. On one side, you have the stark reality: potato pits, ricks of hay, cattle tracks in the mud, just everyday stuff. But on the other side, the poem acts like a pair of magical childhood glasses. Through a kid's eyes, that exact same landscape is entirely transfigured. Light shining through the hay becomes heaven's light escaping. The dawn sky has dancing stars, and ordinary bushes, well, they're suddenly the three wise kings. The magic here relies entirely on the perspective.
And actually, that brings us to a pretty surprising fact. Get this. In 2015, this very poem made the top 10 most popular poems in an RTE competition. What's incredible about that is it achieves this massive popularity as a Christmas poem without ever once mentioning Santa Claus, presents, or even explicitly the birth of Jesus. It just captures the spirit and the significance of the season entirely through the excitement of these ordinary, everyday moments on a farm. Moving on to section 2, a tone of nostalgia, longing for the past. So, getting to the emotional heart of the text, the poem isn't just a simple recording of a child's day, it's an adult looking backward. The tone here is deeply, deeply nostalgic. And nostalgia in this context is the act of recapturing that magical ordinariness of the past, but it's accompanied by a really profound longing for the innocence that inevitably gets lost as we grow up. The text even references the biblical tree of knowledge, basically warning the reader that eating its apple, which represents growing up and gaining adult awareness, opens our eyes to reality we might actually rather forget. It makes us yearn for the simple faith of childhood. Just listen to the emotional contrast at play here. How wonderful that was, how wonderful. This absolutely captures the sheer, breathless excitement of the child in the memory. Yet, because it's written in the past tense, how wonderful that was, it heavily underscores the retrospective longing of the adult speaker. It's this beautiful, kind of bittersweet convergence of past joy and present loss. And to sustain this nostalgic tone, the poem doesn't just follow a strict, slow narrative. Instead, it has this fragmented structure. It jumps excitedly from scene to scene. One moment we're looking at frost on a potato pit, the next we're hearing a father's melodeon or neighbors chatting across bogs. This structure mirrors how memory actually works, right? In vivid, emotional flashes. It creates an incredibly intimate, friendly snapshot of a community and a landscape completely in harmony. Okay, section 3, scenic and sensual imagery, painting with senses. Kavanagh doesn't just tell us about this farm. He makes us feel like we are standing right there in the freezing cold. He does this by heavily appealing to our senses, specifically sight and sound. Visually, we get the contrasting colors of potato pits, one white with frost, the other dark. We see an apple tree with its December glinting fruit, and twinkling stars at dawn. And auditory-wise, the text is incredibly rich. We hear the crunching of ice, the screeching of water hens, the lively tunes of a father's melodeon, and even the rhythmic music of milking created by his mother. It's a full-on sensory experience of a frosty morning. Listen to how all these elements come together. In silver, the wonder of a Christmas townland, the winking glitter of a frosty dawn. It's incredibly evocative. That line perfectly encapsulates the air of earthly enchantment the poet is trying to convey. You can almost literally see the frost sparkling in the early morning light. Let's move to section 4, the poet's toolkit, the mechanics of magic. To see exactly how Kavanagh engineers this world, let's open up his literary toolkit, starting with personification. Simply put, this is when a non-human object is given human qualities or behaviors. It's a really powerful way to make an inanimate landscape feel alive and active. We see a brilliant example of this when the text describes the stars in the morning east dancing to the music of the father's melodeon. By personifying the stars, giving them the human ability to dance, It links the vast celestial sky directly to the intimate, humble music happening inside the farmhouse. It's like the whole universe is participating in their Christmas morning. He also masterfully employs sibilants. This is a specific type of alliteration that creates a hissing or hushing sound effect, achieved by repeating S or sh sounds close together. Somebody wistfully twisted the bellows wheel. The crucial point here is how those repeating S's sounds, somebody wistfully twisted bellows, manipulate the auditory pacing. It forces the reader to slow down, creating this aura of calm, a gentle hush. And this auditory pause happens right before the poem shifts into strong, highly visual snapshots. It acts almost like taking a deep breath before a burst of memory. To bridge the gap between the mundane and the divine, the poem relies heavily on the simile. This is a classic foundational tool for any writer, creating a direct comparison between two different things, usually using the words like, as, or than. Kavanaugh uses a beautiful simile to conclude his fragmented memories, a prayer like a white rose pinned on the Virgin Mary's blouse. This is highly visual and incredibly powerful. It takes the totally abstract concept of a prayer and gives it a physical form, a white rose. It instantly communicates ideas of hope, purity, and the deep spirituality ingrained in the child's Christmas experience. The final and perhaps most powerful tool at play here is allusion. An allusion is an indirect or passing reference designed to call something specific to the reader's mind without ever mentioning it explicitly. The poem is just rich with these. For example, local whin bushes are described as resembling the three wise kings making their journey. A mother's ordinary stable lamp, used for milking, is metaphorically linked to the Star of Bethlehem. These subtle allusions do immense heavy lifting. They elevate everyday, rudimentary rural objects into profound, grand symbols of the religious Christmas season. It keeps the focus on the mundane while linking it directly to the divine. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5. The theme of innocence. All these techniques and imagery point toward one somatic peak. The innocence of childhood is inevitably lost through the process of growing up. The poem is essentially a love song to childhood, but it carries the tragedy of knowing that this worldview is temporary. As adults, we can remember the magic, sure, we can try to recreate it with words, but we can no longer see the world with that exact, unquestioning enchantment. The text describes the gay garden that was childhood's. But we must remember, it was just a simple rural landscape. It is only in the eyes of the child that the frost, the rough cattle tracks, and the muddy stones are completely transfigured into absolute delights. The magic doesn't reside in the objects themselves. It resides in the innocent, faithful perspective of the viewer. So when you look back through the lens of your own memories, what entirely ordinary moments from your childhood now seem magically transfigured to you? Take a moment to think about your own Kavanaugh-esque memories. Thanks for joining me on this explainer today, and keep finding the magic in the mundane.